There we go. So I'm here with John Hayden, and I have to tell you that John's been one of those go-to gurus for me for a very long time. And I use the word guru very seriously in this case, because if you want to know about Facebook, then you got to be paying attention to John, because you're awesome. And I've really enjoyed watching your content develop over the years and getting to meet you at various nonprofit events. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and who you work with?
Sure. My laptop is on my lap. What do you know? What do I do? So my career is actually sales and marketing, but for-profit companies. And I worked for a healthcare company, actually Blue Cross in Massachusetts for many years. I worked for a traditional media company. We resold ad space for Inc. and Business Week magazine. And then I worked for a whole bunch of software companies for a few years. And then, I wasn't really fulfilled, actually. And talk about mindfulness, right? So for me, a lot of it is knowing yourself, really knowing what do you, and I'm not, my personality, I'm not the kind of cutthroat, competitive, got to get on top of everyone else type of person, right? I'm not like a typical capitalist personality or mentality. I don't have that mentality. I think about others and, hey, if I have enough, that's cool. But if I'm creating, what I look at is really creating value, right? And so, and this is a common experience, I think, with a lot of entrepreneurs or people that start their own gig, is that they do it mainly because they don't really like what they're doing. They don't feel fulfilled. This life is one life, okay? Who knows about what happens afterwards? But you want to make the biggest dent possible in the world. And for me personally, I feel that it's about the value that I create, and the kind of work that I'm doing is really important. So in the 2000s, basically what happened was, as everybody knows, right, the economy starts tanking. Now, I was selling HR software, okay, in 2004 through 2008. I was selling 2005 to 2009, something like that, selling HR software. And if anybody knows anything about for-profit financing, HR is a cost center. It is not a profit center at all. It's an expense. So if anything is going to be cut in terms of cost to a business, a for-profit business, it will be big software packages in HR. Marketing, sales, those are still really important, but that gets cut. So anyhow, I saw a lot of my friends getting laid off over time. And I said, oh man, I really got to do something different, right?
Here it comes.
Yeah. And I always had a dream. I had a couple of dreams. One was I can do my own gig, and I can and stand behind a product or a service and be creative and use my creativity for the work that I do, which is incredible. I went to Berklee School of Music. You probably see the guitar back there. Yeah. I went to Berklee School of Music. Cool. Yeah. And I write and play music, and I have CDs. Well, CDs. I don't have CDs anymore. No one has CDs anymore. But I have a bunch of stuff on iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff. Do I make any money? No, not at all. But still, I had this desire to do creative work, right? And also, I'm a parent. You're a parent, so you know what this is like. Well, what do you tell your kid to do for their life, right? What kind of work should they do for their life? And I was looking at the work I was doing, and really I didn't see a kind of a value, like a net value that was created. Great, I'm selling software and I'm making money, and the software company is making money, but is it really changing lives? No. So concurrently during that period, I saw my friends working for nonprofits, and even though they were making a lot less than me, I was so jealous because they were doing work that I thought was really cool. Working for animal shelters, homeless shelters, making the world a better place in a very practical way, And so one thing kind of led to the other. Now, it didn't happen overnight, obviously, but one thing led to the other. I kind of started my own business on the side. And actually, who's the guy, Gaping Void? Hugh.
Oh, yeah, Hugh.
Right? Hugh McLeod.
Hugh McLeod.
He says in his book, he has got a book, I forget, 36... whatever. Anyhow, he's got a book, and I have it on the shelf. I'm not going to get up and get it though, because I have to take the laptop off my lap. So, but anyhow, he has a book on entrepreneurship, being creative and being an entrepreneur. And in one chapter, he talks about don't quit your day job, which is really important, right? So I was building up this thing on the side, and then eventually, the economy started tanking even more. I got laid off, and fortunately, I had enough momentum, I should say, in the blog that I was establishing and the work that I was doing, a little bit of momentum. And now, so I was able to, make that transition. It was a very painful, nail-biting experience. It felt like someone gave me a pair of wings and a propeller and shoved me off, a building and said, "Hey, good luck, bye-bye," and then I have to figure it out, Yeah, exactly. So the work that I do now is really, and I found I had a very early, competency in this area, and that was being creative and helping nonprofits how to tell better stories. And also I have a lot of experience in marketing. For-profit marketing tends to be very focused on driving actions, creating awareness, a certain message, starting certain conversations and so forth. So now obviously, so social media has changed a lot how marketing happens now, and that makes it even more fun because it's a lot more creative, because you have to come up with the ways, how are you going to get people talking about you? That's not easy. It's really not easy. They could say bad things. They could say good things. And that's the thing now, is that people can talk about your business, any business really. People can, right now, they can comment and say, "God, what the heck? This guy didn't even dress up. He didn't shave. Well, actually, I shaved a little bit, but it's okay." All right. I figured this is pretty casual. Mindfulness, mindful entrepreneurship it's about the mind. Also, I like this T-shirt,
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yep.
Well, do you think that people who are basically mindful at the start tend to maybe want to be entrepreneurs? They may not make the jump, but I think a lot of times in real corporate business, we find that we're not satisfied with what we're doing. We're not working towards our own personal goals, and we get so frustrated by it that finally we break out and really go out and be an entrepreneur and take our licks, because you're certainly going to take a lot of licks before.
My God.
It's not easy.
Yep. It's the hardest work, and it's very scary. Actually, it's very scary.
Terrifying.
So I think just to add to what you're saying, I think being mindful of your own fear and and also accepting the fact that yes, you are going to be freaked out, but you can take a breath. You can focus yourself. It's not an external situation necessarily that is the reality that's freaking you out. It's mostly your reaction to that, right? So that's why I feel like it's important to, for example, there at the beginning there were many times when I said, "Geez, am I going to be able to pay rent this month?" It was really nail biting. Is this? And then of course the negative, the monkeys, the mind monkeys, the mental monkeys, they hop on your shoulder and they say, "You know what? You're going to be a total failure. This is not going to work for you at all, and you're just a loser. It's not going to work." Right. And so that, I think mindfulness helps kind of recognize those monkeys and say, "Hey, you're a monkey. Look, I don't have time for you, monkey." Okay. Right. And then you can take a look at the reality, which is, in my case, I was just looking at the growth over time and things that I had in the pipeline, and so you can actually get answers to you can always find an answer to you're a loser. But the answer is always from inside. Are you making more money or less money? That's an external thing that you can see. Are you getting more customers or not? You're getting more repeat customers or not? This is all information we could see, right? How we react to that's kind of our own problem, I think.
So what kind of support structures can we put in place to help us see that yes, progress is being made? No, we're not going to die. And in that for me, it's the first quarter of the year leading up to the April 15th taxes that is the most stressful for me. I think every entrepreneur has a different cycle But that's my cycle. So this is kind of my crunch. Oh shit, why did I do this time? And I've
Yeah.
been doing this for 20 years. So what kind of processes do you put in place to kind of make it easier? What kind of metrics, or, how can we set ourselves up for more success?
Yeah. So I think it's really important for me personally. It's been really important to have multiple revenue streams. Okay. So for example, right now I'm working on a whole bunch of online courses that I have on my website. Okay. Now it's not growing as fast as I want. And certainly if I depended only on that revenue, I would be in serious trouble. So I mix that up with consulting. I also work on designing and developing websites. I do a lot of speaking and training. So I think for me personally, it's like mixing up the pot of money that's coming in so that you can not stress out. You always have some source, some direction that you can go in. And I think, honestly speaking, there's a certain amount of freedom in being an entrepreneur because I can think on my feet. I don't have to depend on someone else to say, hey, let's launch this really asinine software product that no one hates, but it's got a cool brand name. It's not going to sell. I know it's not going to sell. So I don't want to sell that thing. My livelihood depends on that. My livelihood depends upon, an Excel spreadsheet that the CFO happens to fill out at a public company. I don't want that, right?
Yeah.
I want to be able to do my own thing. Now, so what's the trade-off? The trade-off is a lot more, you have to be much more organized. I'm not the biggest organized type of person. Honestly speaking, I have ADHD, which is in some ways it's a benefit because I get to think in the moment. I'm very creative, and but I need to create these certain systems to keep myself organized. So, for example, for projects, I use this project software called Trello. I don't know if you've heard of Trello. Trello is awesome, and then I also use Google. What are they called? Reminders or something like that. I have them on my
Alerts?
phone. Yeah, not alerts, but actually reminders. Like in the calendar, you can give yourself a reminder, or I think it's called a to-do or a task or something like that. And so every day I have a running list of tasks, and I can cross them off. So I think having the system structure in place is good, but also the habit. Just because the software is there, it doesn't mean you're actually going to be using it, right? So one thing, again, I haven't mastered everything, and I'm far from mastering most things, but I feel like having a ritual of every night looking at the next day. What do I need to do? What's important? Checking things off. What's the priority? Shifting priorities and that sort of thing. So adjusting the priority as well. And then also, the other thing that I've recognized about myself. And you could stop me if I keep.
No, go.
Is that for me personally, I'm an introvert. Okay, so I get a lot of I can keep myself endlessly fascinated all by myself in my own head. Oh, I'm having a big party all day long, but the reality is that I need to be around people, and actually I focus more when I have people around me. So I'll do really well in a cafe that's really loud, lots of people working. And I also work at a co-working space in Cambridge. So I started renting space. It's not really renting space. You pay a monthly fee. You show up and you could use any desk, private meetings and all this stuff. They have the amenities of an office without your own specific four walls to an office, so they have coffee and whatnot. But I go there because there are people there. There are people there working on their own gig, working on their own products or whatever they're working on. They're entrepreneurs, and they're it's a really cool environment. And I meet people there, so I feel like a community, a rhythm of daily touching people, not physically, but connecting with people on a daily basis, getting feedback, saying hi, thinking about another person. These are really important. I think for us as a species, we need to, we're social beings. We're social creatures. My cat doesn't do much, actually. He's walking by. He's ignoring me totally.
That's what cats do.
Yeah, cat doesn't care at all what my mental state is, as long as, gets food, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, but that's an interesting statement for somebody, I mean, I really think of myself as an introvert, and I'm completely the opposite. I can't work in a public space. When I used to work in cubes back in the day, it made me nuts. I work at home, and I use Brain FM to kind of keep my head connected, which is really helps me stay focused. Because I don't think I've ever been diagnosed with ADHD, but I think it is an entrepreneur quality. And I'm calling it a quality on purpose because it allows us to be more flexible. And I'm not very regimented either. I use, the Pomodoro system?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the 20, that's what I do too.
Yeah, it's huge.
I don't
because otherwise I'd be
20
off.
minutes. Yeah. I don't follow the 20 minutes because it's hard because I never remember to actually set the 20 minutes, but I do I'll put my head down for an hour and a half, and and then the next thing I have to do is I have to close the laptop. I have to get out. It's really hard for me to go meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. I need to get out and go for a walk, and I think that's healthy. I always keep thinking about how we're animals. We are animals. We are breathing animals. The conditions of work today are radically different than the environment that created our bodies, right? We're used to sleeping. We're used to taking a lot of naps during the day, running around, foraging, having some sort of feast, but not settling down for too long because you never know. There might be an enemy or an animal or something like that. We're always moving. We're always on the go, but we're also always taking lots of time to rest. We're not really made to organize. Stay organized. A schedule, a calendar. What? It's sun up, sun down, and winter, summer, spring, fall.
It's not really the natural constructs that we were supposed to be.
Not the natural constructs. Yeah, there's a lot. That's why, honestly, I have a theory, and it's between you and me. I have a theory that a lot of mental health issues in today are actually created, not solely, but the work environment today that people are going through, driving to work, going to work, doing a job that they hate, that I think will really contribute to some severe mental problems. I mean, really, anxiety, depression, all this stuff. I think we're just living in an environment that is not healthy. It really isn't healthy. So that's the other benefit of being an entrepreneur is that I can, I have the freedom to basically set my own rhythm, right? I work early in the morning I do like spurts of an hour throughout the day, an hour in the morning, an hour, late morning, an hour early afternoon, mid-afternoon, late afternoon, and that sort of thing. Kind of spread it out throughout the day. Yeah.
And we all have different rhythms about when we work. When I used to code, I worked really late at night, and that was my most productive time. It was after everybody else had gone to bed, and I would just sit up and code. And now that I don't do that, my hours have shifted, and I'm starting to do a little more in the morning. I think one of the beauties for me of being an entrepreneur is I can take a break. I can go ride my horse. I can go out to lunch with my girlfriend. I can do whatever I need to do to keep myself mentally healthy and be a little bit more responsive than I would be if I was in a box somewhere, because that just drives me nuts.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
And I think the same thing goes with some of the things like traffic. I'm in Silicon Valley, and the traffic here is crazy making, and you as well. It's really that rats in a cage analogy where we start to feel pressured, and you just need to get out and just go for a walk. And that's one of the freedoms that we get just by being entrepreneurs, that we can create our own environment, we can create our own schedules, and we can decide what we're going to be mindful now as opposed to the agendas.
Yeah, and I ride if I can, if it's not raining horribly or winter, I ride my bike to work, because it's really a 20-minute bike ride from my house to where I work. And they have a bike cage, so I can throw my bike in there, and then I go upstairs and I get my exercise. I get to think, I'm using my body, right? And I think that's important to consider, especially as an entrepreneur. I feel like it is important to find the unique rhythm that is right for you, and every person's different, but I can tell you, and I'm sure you've had this experience too. There have been days when I've worked nonstop from 7 in the morning until 7 at night, and I haven't seen a person, and the sun's going down, and a couple of days like that, and I'm starting to go crazy. It's just not healthy,
Yeah.
So I feel finding the rhythm, finding the right work that you like to do, and finding your physical rhythm. Like when are you really focused? When are you more creative? And when to actually go outside and go for a walk,
And it's good to step back and notice that, and just stop, and be present and say, okay, what's going on with me right now? Because quite often, you'll be focused on accomplishing a task or, beating a challenge, and you get so wrapped up in it that, you're just frozen and you're not capable of actually looking at it objectively anymore. But if you walk away for 5 minutes and come back, then you have fresh eyes and you have more ability to be able to actually reason.
Yeah.
Because, I think a lot of times we don't realize how driving ourselves like that isn't helping us.
Yeah. And I like how you started to talk about how, walking away for 5 minutes and then coming back to it, giving yourself that breather. Because I think the brain wants to work through this stuff, and it will do it unconsciously if we have a problem. The brain just works that way anyhow. And in fact, I read an article recently where science is now really confirming the fact that the purpose of a dream or dreaming at night is for us to, there's actually 3 purposes. It's kind of fascinating. So one purpose is to file things. It's like a filing system at night. So lots of things happen during the day. We meet people, we return a phone call. Okay, that person called me back. I don't have to do that anymore. This meeting went well. And so we go through this process of filing, like putting stuff in deeper long-term memory versus short-term memory, and throwing out stuff that's not even important. Like the brain will just throw out this junk that's just not important. And then the dreaming part is actually working through problem, right? When we have dreams, our mind is kind of unconsciously trying to put several things together. And there was a study many years ago where they basically had people dreaming about skiing, downhill skiing. And they had some exercise where before they went to sleep, they kind of, thought about it and, almost made themselves have a dream or something like that. And then during the daytime, they had to do a video game where you're skiing, in the video game. And for those people that had a dream about the video game, them skiing in the dream or moving in the dream a certain way, they did better on the video game the next day. They actually performed better without any sort of practice or anything like that, all just with dreaming. They were able to figure that out. So I think that's important. One thing I do, for me, walking is it's a good way to just let the unconscious mind kind of do its thing. Like it's almost like an engine in the background. So I'll be walking along and, just breathing, looking at the world, looking at the trees, the water, other people, and just walking along. And then I'll have, the ideas will kind of work themselves out. And then by the time I get back to work, something has come up, some idea sprang from that walk. Oh, that's a great idea. Oh, and I also do writing too. So many people have an iPhone or an Android. So I'll actually use the Notes app, and I'll use dictation. And it looks like I'm talking on the phone, so it doesn't look like I'm so crazy, right? But actually, I'm dictating a blog post to myself, and it's a very, very, very rough draft. But then when I get back to my office, now I can open it up on my laptop and do the a little bit more work on it. So, also I guess we live in this time where, yes, the work environment is really stressful and the demands of work are really stressful, but the technology is there if we use it creatively to work in a more sane way, build good, healthy working habits, Well,
I find that stepping away part really works, especially if you can say, okay, I'm not going to think about that for 10 minutes because you're still going to think about it, but it's not going to be your main focus. And getting away and looking at the flowers, or for me, it's stupid things like washing the dishes. I always have epiphanies when I'm washing the dishes. And I do the same thing, but I actually, I dictate to Siri and tell her to email Evernote and then
Oh,
save it in the subject line as a blog post. So I
oh,
have a whole section in Evernote that's all these random, maybe crazy ideas for blog
yeah, yeah,
posts, but I
yeah.
had to get them out or I wouldn't be able to walk anymore, you know?
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's great. Yeah, that's smart, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that we can adapt to how we work as individuals as opposed to how we work within a corporation. But
Mm,
then when you've been out in the wild for a long time,
hmm.
um, then you have to go back into a corporation and deal in their environment.
Mm.
So how can we kind of,
I never want to do that
I
ever.
know I never do,
Just for the record.
or
No.
endless conference calls, but we still have to deal with it to some extent with
Oh,
specific
absolutely,
clients.
for sure.
So
Yeah.
what kind of things do you do to kind of get around that major shift in the way that you work?
You mean going from uh, preparing myself for meetings? It sounds like
Yeah,
preparing myself for
on-site
meetings. Yeah.
meetings at some corporate
Hmm.
hoo-ha headquarters, as
Yeah,
opposed to
yeah.
where you normally work.
Yep, yep. I think it's just about putting on a game face for me, and
Mhm.
knowing that, it's an hour and a half meeting, it's a 2 hour meeting. I want to create the most amount of value in that meeting, right? And I have to wear pants, A. B, I can't, be throwing the swear words around or whatever. There's a certain way to behave. It's kind of similar, I guess, most people when they go to work. Um, but yeah, so that's how I do it. And I always do a little bit of homework before the meeting, looking at the background of the company or the nonprofit and
Mhm.
finding out what was the last meeting so that I go in and I have something, a little bit more context.
Yeah, because sometimes when you go into a meeting and say there are 10 people in the room and you're supposed to give a presentation or part of a presentation, but they're all a group and you're the
Mm.
outlier and you're an
Hmm.
entrepreneur and you're an introvert.
Mm.
So, when I come into a meeting with those expectations, like you, I want to know who else is in the room,
Hmm.
what the agenda is, and then I kind of line out um, bullet points that I'm gonna hit, and that's
Hmm.
really all I take. Like I don't take a laptop anymore because I really feel like opening a laptop in front of a bunch of other people is just putting up a
Mm.
barrier.
It really
So,
is. Yeah. Yeah.
I try not to do that. I try to take just the notes.
Mm.
Um, but it can be very disruptive, both for us as entrepreneurs, but also for the company,
Mm.
because they don't necessarily know how to deal with that
Mm.
different mindset coming into their space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does. It does. I bring a pad and a pen. I'll just
Hmm.
bring like a leather bound or a pleather bound thing, with a
Convenient.
note, and I'll just doodle. I'll take notes. Sometimes I'll draw like a little mind map kind of thing of the
Hmm.
discussion, whatever it is. Um, so I think I'm better with paper in person, and I think it actually looks. Wow, he brought his notepad. Whoa, he must be so serious. Wow, it's great. He's really listening. And honestly, it's a sincere effort to listen, and that's the
Hmm.
main reason why I'm bringing the notepad so I can remember everything that's said. So I think not being stuck or limited by technology, but finding how technology can free things up. There will never be an easier app to use than a book
Mm.
or a notepad. You don't even have to do anything. It's always on. It's never going to crash. You flip the page, you pick up the pen. Sometimes the pen may not write, but at least the notepad will work. The paper will work.
Hmm. Well,
So,
there have been a lot of studies done that actually writing something down helps you remember it more than typing it.
oh,
So
huh.
it's really interesting that it's actually the hand movement that connects you. I think Beth Canner posted something the other day about doodling because she's gone from coloring to doodling,
Mm.
and that actually doodling while someone is speaking helps you to remember
Hmm.
what it is that they're saying because your
Hmm.
mind connects that, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and also you make relationships too. So you'll be
Hmm.
doodling something, and then Someone will mention something about cloud software or whatever, and you'll draw a cloud and then a string attached to something else. And so it's just a different, I think images are pretty cool because they can, I imagine the doodling is a much more creative way of capturing a discussion than just literally writing down word for word what somebody said.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I would think so.
Mm-hmm.
So let's switch gears a little bit to, and I know that you've been working in nonprofits for a long time, but how, when you're going out on your own, you've decided you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to cut the cord, nonprofits isn't your best bet, but how do you choose what you're going to do? What are your first steps to trying to be more mindful of what your personal goals are and what you want to achieve? And then going out there and let's say you're a consultant rather than, you just created the perfect widget, which is a totally different mindset.
Yeah, it is a different mindset. Yeah. I think the critical thing for me when I started was to find the niche, right? I knew that I wanted to work with nonprofits somehow. And I knew, so basically there's the audience, there's your own experience, understanding what's the strength, what competencies am I bringing to my work, right? I'm not an accountant, so I'm not going to do accounting, but I do have a wealth of marketing and sales experience, so I can bring that to fundraising and nonprofit communications, right? And that's what I have been doing for several years now. So I think understanding what your own capability is and what your strengths are, what's unique about me, what's unique about you, and what do you bring to the table, basically? I hate to use a cliche, but what is it? What are your strengths that are your strengths and that you like actually doing? You like those strengths, right? So there's that. But there's also this idea of a niche, right? So really, to me, that involves what do you do well, right? What do you do well? What do you want to do for a long time, possibly? And also, where's the need? Where's the need? But what's the niche, right? So when I first started out, I was, looking at the competitive landscape, who's out there dealing with nonprofits, who has a voice. And I wanted to kind of establish myself as a thought leader over time, right? And I found out the few, it's a small little fish pond, not too many people. So it was easy for me to get my foot in there. If I was trying to, start talking and being an expert of all things social media, somebody like Mari Smith or something like that, where it's cross industry, I think I would have a very difficult time. But with nonprofits, I feel like because I've selected that specific industry, that specific niche, I've been able to build up a pretty good following, which is interesting because it's really, that's not intuitive at all. You would think, you want more is better, more possible audience, a bigger audience is way better, right? But actually, it's almost like when you make the niche really small, your personal audience gets bigger, Yeah,
because it's more focused. They actually care more. I always laugh when I go into a meeting and say, okay, let's define your market. And they're like, well, it's everybody. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Nope.
It's not. And it can't be. And as you build up the credibility within that small niche, you build up people who are really advocates of you and your work because you belong to a smaller tribe and that makes you more visible. Big fish, small pond kind of thing. But, it's really about focus.
Yeah.
So how do you find out what people care about within that niche?
That's good. So I read a lot of forums. And I found out what are the FAQs that people are asking? What's not being answered that I can easily answer that other people aren't answering, right? What are the challenges? So I think answering those questions, it doesn't happen overnight, but for me it was just doing a lot of research, reading lots of blogs, going into different forums, reading the forums, finding out what's important to people, and then publishing articles based on that, and then eventually not to mention that, but so that's the marketing piece, right? Finding the niche from a marketing piece. But what am I offering as a service, right? What am I selling? And so really being very specific about that is also a challenge for me that took a few years to really define, well, what am I giving people? What is it that I'm really doing? I think that's the tough thing,
Yeah, I'm familiar with that issue too, because, we started out in the 90s as a web development company, and then we went into e-learning. And now we've really refocused into just social media consulting and management, which still is really broad. But, it's trying to do all things. People would come to our website and go, what do you do? And they really didn't know, which, now I've actually focused. I got rid of my blog for my corporate website, and I focused it on a one-pager, and bada bing, we're done. And I've actually gotten more leads in the last month since I made the transition than I did in 6 months before that.
Yeah.
Because it's more focused.
Yep.
Which is more mindful in a really twisted sort of way.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that attracts me to the idea of having a more mindful mindset about how we do business is recognizing those little things that you're wasting your time on and recognizing them earlier than 15 years, so that you can actually improve the quality of the time that you have that you're working with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. So I'll give you an example. I do website design projects. So a nonprofit will hire me and say, "Hey, can you help us with our website strategy?" So I right now I'm working with a couple of developers that I have do the building part. Develop the theme, put the theme in, pick the plugins, and I'm more of the project manager strategy person. I'm working with the client much more on content and how they're telling the stories and the images and the messaging that they're focusing on, because that's what I like to do. I don't want to have to spend my time trying to figure out which plugin is going to work the best for the specific thing that they need to be doing.
Right.
There are two people I know at least that really like to do that, and I pay them, and that's it. For each project, there's certain aspects. So I think also, to your point of kind of working in a way that makes sense, knowing when to have either technology do something for you, automate something, or to just basically have a contractor or someone else help you. Yeah.
And that goes beyond recognizing just strengths and weaknesses. It also includes, as the CEO of your own company, what your time is best spent on and what your personal skills are. If you're a really great, interpersonal communicator, then you need to be out in the market and letting people do what they need to do in the office, and figuring out what that is that's going to work for you.
Yeah. I think that's really key. That's important.
Yeah. So I know that you've made faith a big part of your business model. And
you said faith?
I did say faith.
Like FAITH.
That's the one.
Cool. Okay.
That, it isn't so much about specific religions as much as it is spirituality and a presence to really walk your talk. It got me all choked up. But I think that's a really important part of being a mindful entrepreneur, mindful business person is, having that integrity and sticking to it, which isn't always easy because you get sidelined by the corporate models or bright and shiny over there that could be the one business model that would give you passive income for the rest of your life. Yeah. There's so many things to chase. Yep. And how do you keep that integrity? What grounds you, I guess, is my really long question.
Yeah. I think just I like it when my clients get a result. In other words, I like it when they're able to talk to the community better, when they're able to raise more money, when they get a tangible result. That's what I want. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I mean, come on, they're nonprofits, right? It's not like they have boatloads of money to give away, right? And so I feel like what I'm doing is I'm indirectly having an impact in their cause, right? So that's important to me. That's important to me. And it's also important to me that that people are happy when they work with me. So I always follow up and I say, hey, how could I do better? And really learning from them. How can I do better? And I've learned that there's two ways to go in this. One is, oh, here's the client, send me another email. Like, oh, but this is outside the scope of work. Oh, whatever. And reply, oh, this is outside the scope of the work. Sorry, we're going to have to do another project. Whatever. And just kind of giving that person an awful experience. That I could do that, but I'm not going to do it, right? What I'd rather do is say, give them a great experience, and have it be super easy. If they want to send me emails, that's great. Send me emails, but they're paying me. They're paying for that. So I try and have this attitude of positivity, being really positive with people, focusing on the goals. What are the goals we're trying to achieve? Being respectful and so forth. So that's what I focus on. So integrity, for me, honestly speaking, the integrity is not necessarily an issue right now for me because I'm working with nonprofits. I feel like I'm doing really great work that I believe in. Okay. When I was working for a software company that was selling vaporware, right? The integrity piece was a little challenging. I had to often make promises that I knew, my boss wanted me to make that promise, but I knew that ultimately that promise was going to be fulfilled. So that was very, really difficult for me, Yeah. So the integrity piece to me is great. The faith aspect comes into what's the vision that I have for this client, right? What do I want? I want them to be, it's almost like I have a vision of them dancing and having success and a victory in whatever they're trying to achieve. Often I do training. I train organizations how to do their own social media. So, and I'm always, directing my intent or my faith, I guess, to have them have a totally satisfied, great experience and also success, right? Successful and happy.
Right. Yeah. Which is what we would love all our clients to be. But it's not always as easy as we think it is because, so many times with nonprofits in particular, I find that they're really resources strapped. And when I say resources, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about people to do the work, to create the content, to pull all this stuff together. And so they kind of, look to you as a superhero to come in and, save the day and achieve all of this.
Yeah. Whether
or not there's the budget there to do it or not. So sometimes you've got to kind of scale it back and say, okay, we can do this now, but how can you adjust expectations, or is that something that you do right off the bat, is setting expectations on what you're going to be able to deliver to the client for the available resources that they have?
Yeah, I think the expectation it's really important to set that right up front. If it's coaching, I have an agreement that people have to sign that basically says that they are responsible for implementing all the stuff that we're talking about. They're going to be given homework each week. I'm going to follow up each week. We're going to work together in a certain way, and they have that agreement. If it's a website project, that's a different animal, or that's where, again, expectations have to be really clear right up front. Yeah.
Well, John,
and also the other thing that you mentioned, which is also really key with nonprofits, is recognizing the resources. So now when I'm working with an organization, I'm finding out a lot. Well, what resources do you have? What systems do you have in place? What's your maturity in terms of an organization using social media? What's your capacity? How well do you listen to your audience? Do you have a content calendar? All of these questions I'm asking, and they give me an indication of where they're at and where they need to be going next. And if they want to do some wild thing, hey, we want to create, somebody on our board had a great idea for a viral video. we just feel like we made this video, millions of people would love our organization. Okay, well, you have 400 Facebook fans. Okay, I mean, you don't have a Twitter. You have a Twitter account. You tweet every week or so. So there has to be some realistic expectations. I think there's no such thing as a viral video. I say there's a viral video. They only happen after kind of in hindsight, right? You're like, oh wow. My favorite viral video, and maybe we should finish with this, is goats screaming like humans.
Oh, I love the screaming goats. How can you not love screaming goats?
Screaming goats, and they sound just like human beings, humans screaming. It's like, it's when you look at that, I mean, I don't know how many millions or possibly billions of views that video has now. Who would have predicted that would be a viral thing? There's no way you can plan that sort of thing. You just can't do it.
No, because nobody can be purposely odd, which is what really makes things viral. It's that they jolt you in some way, whether it's pleasant or not. But, there's always some kind of a jolt there. And I don't think you can manufacture that as much as everybody tells me that we should be able to.
Yeah, and it's also hard. I mean, it's almost impossible to make a video that really strikes a nerve in a very specific way. The one thing I'm thinking about is when Bernie Sanders was in Oregon and that bird flew up on the thing, and that was like just a magical moment for him and for a lot of people, right? It was just this amazing moment, and then but I think what was really cool about that was his response. He could have said, "Oh, what a cool bird," and the bird flew away. But he really very spontaneously said, "This is a bird of peace. It's a dove, and he wants world peace. No more war, no more war." And that he just nailed it. It was so. I think there's something to be. The lesson that I took from that was not necessarily the viral nature of it, but actually the mindset of being prepared. For a business? What's your mission as a business? And knowing that and living that and breathing that, you're much more prepared to respond in the moment. So Bernie Sanders lives and breathes no more war, no more war, and fighting injustice. So naturally, he sees a bird like this, he's going to respond in the best possible way.
Instead of doing this.
Yeah, instead of shooing it away.
Shooing the bird away. Well, did you see that actually today there was a photo that went out that the Pope was speaking? And he raised his hand and a dove landed on his hand.
No, really?
Seriously.
Oh,
I'll have to find it for you.
That's
but it is how you respond in those moments. It's like the soccer player, who he was a black soccer player. And I don't remember what the issue with the crowd was, but they were booing him and hissing and somebody threw him a banana and he picked it up and ate it instead of responding in a negative way. It was kind of like, okay, thank you.
Yeah. There's a T-shirt I have actually that I forgot to wear. I thought to myself, I got to wear that T-shirt. And the T-shirt says, "D, the fat whale, saves the whales." Okay. And this is a true story. It's this girl, a high school student, and her name is Dee, D-E-E. And a lot of kids were making fun of her. "You're a fat whale." She's overweight. "You're a fat whale, blah, blah, blah. D, the fat whale, D, the fat whale." So she says, "You know what? I'm going to own this." She decided to sell these T-shirts. D, the fat whale, saves the whales, and all the proceeds go to funding saving the whales.
That's so cool.
She owned it 100%. That's what was cool about that, rather than being defeated, which is so often the story that we hear about bullying is how mean it is. And, but she turned it into this positive thing. Of course, these kids, they called her D, the fat whale. They feel like an idiot now because now it's all, So,
That's
how you respond.
respond.
Yeah.
Well, John, I know I could talk to you forever.
Same here.
It's always fun. Do you want to leave one absolute word of wisdom? I'll give you 12 seconds to think about that. For the listeners, just to let them know, this will be on YouTube and it'll also be on my podcast on Spreaker. So if you didn't get to watch it on Blab, then You can always look for it on YouTube and Spreaker, and those links will go out on my Twitter account as well as on the website, mindfulsocialmarketing.com.
So my tip. So I know that many people maybe listening might have different businesses and different goals and dreams and all that stuff. And of course, there are many ways to achieve these things, mindfulness and many things, right? But I think the biggest factor is to never give up. Whatever your goal is, never give up. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Honestly speaking, the work that I do, if it was 10 years ago, I would say that's impossible, right? So you never know what's possible, and you really can't know unless you continue. So if you give up, you're not going to get there. So never give up.
Never give up.
I like that. My word of wisdom. Yeah.
That's good. I like that. Well, I'm going to pause the recording. Hi, everybody. You showed up a little late, you guys.